So delighted to be joined by Aaron from GAA Fan TV. We're going to review the weekend's football action. An incredible day yesterday on Sunday, with Tipperary and Cavan ending long ways for provincial titles. Like, I haven't seen many days like it. Have you?
No, definitely not. Like, that was it was definitely kind of a mad weekend with everything that happened in both games. Like, I was even looking back there. I remember there, like, during the week at different provincial shocks and stuff like that, just to see like what other kind of provincial shocks there were. Like, in the past 10 years, there's been very little, and then all of a sudden, in the space of one day, you have Tipperary beating Cork, winning their first Munster title in 85 years, and then you have Cavan winning their first Ulster title in 23 years. And I suppose, with the weekend that was in it as well, with it being Bloody Sunday, like I'm not a huge believer in destiny or things are meant to be or anything like that, but sometimes you do just wonder, like, was this all just meant to happen? Because you have the exact same semi-finalists as you had back in 1920, 100 years ago as well, which is just incredible. Both teams playing each other, Dublin playing Cavan, Mayo playing Tipperary. So it was just a crazy weekend yesterday, and it was almost hard to process it all, in all honesty.
Yeah, because the odds yesterday were even big, but imagine what the odds at the start for all these provincial championships. What were Cavan? I didn't give them a prayer voice in the Donegal game. Tipperary, on the other hand, you could make possibly a case, but then again, you thought Cork were taking Kerry out, so it should still be a Cork win. But incredible. When Tipperary won, you think Donegal should look. We've had the high now. It's going to be just a boring enough Sunday, but Cavan topped it off again then.
Yeah, like, it was, and I nearly forgot about the Cavan game as well, like, after the Tipperary win, because, like, the Tipperary win was just such a massive shock that you didn't really expect Cavan to do it. And it looked like Donegal, like, they started quite slow. They didn't really start the game like a house on fire, but to be honest, I expected them to be quite slow in the game, just with the fact that they'd come through two tough tests in Tyrone and Armagh, and then I thought, they'll have their eyes on Dublin now. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But once again, just kind of similarly to what happened with Kerry against Cork, I think another team have had their eyes on Dublin, and they're too fixated on Dublin that they've underestimated the team they were actually playing and been caught. And what a win for Cavan as well. Like, they literally gave 100%. Some of the players on the pitch probably would have died for their county out there. Like, you're looking at Thomas Galligan, like, massive head injury, then hurt his hand as well. He was already battling back from injuries as well. So it was incredible stuff from Cavan, really.
Yeah, we'll go into the games in a bit more detail now. We'll start with the first game of the day, was Tipperary Cork. And as I said earlier, we know Tipperary's they have talent. They were in the 2016 All-Ireland semi-final, even though I think I heard Colin O'Rourke before the game saying, not many people have heard the likes of Conor Sweeney or Michael Quinlan, and I don't know where he's been, but I think they set the tempo of the game very quickly. Sweeney got, I think, a mark and a point from play maybe inside the first 2 or 3 minutes, and it just gave him that encouragement that this game could be here for us today.
Yeah, definitely. Like, Tipperary came flying out of traps. Like, they hit 3 points, I think, within the first 2 minutes. And they needed to start fast as well, just to kind of really set that tempo. And, those 3 points in the first 2 minutes were probably the 3 most important points, because they won it by 3 in the end. But, like, Cork never really turned it around from there. Like, and I think the problem was, like, Cork, where they were trying to work the perfect score, and they were, like, hitting it from side to side, and they didn't really have the confidence in themselves really to try and overturn Tipperary, whereas Tipperary were very direct. They didn't really have any fear. They were, like, some of the points that Quinlan and Sweeney hit at times, you only hit those points, or you only attempt to take those points if you don't have fear or you don't have pressure. And I think for Cork, like, obviously, they are a young team. They're not used to playing in, I know some of their players have played in under 20 finals and whatnot, but the majority of that team have never played in a Munster senior football final. It's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of pressure to be the favourites in a game, in a final that you're not normally in and you're not normally used to winning. So it kind of suited Tipperary down to the ground, and they actually do probably have the better forwards as well. Like, when you take Luke Connolly out of Cork, they don't really have many players who can kick from 30 to 40 metres on the pitch. Mark Collins may be the only one, but Brian Hurley on his day, Cathal O'Mahony might be in a couple of years, but yeah, it was huge for Tipperary. It was a massive win for them.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the core forwards, once Connolly went off, you just didn't feel like they were getting back into that game. Just no one really wanted to take the shot on. And yeah, Connolly was a big miss for them because he, again, I think Tomas O'Shea was even saying he does have the arrogance to take on shots. We saw that against Kerry as well. But Tipperary, just going back to their 2016 form in some ways, they're a pure footballing side. They like to kick pass, they like to carry the ball, and some of the scores yesterday were brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a lot of quality in their team as well. Like even Colin O'Riordan coming back into the team as well. Like the amount of high balls he was winning, like in the midfield from kickouts, especially in the closing stages of the second half. But yeah, like they've a lot. Even David Power even alluded to it in some of his interviews, like having been there, won minor titles with Tipperary in 2011, and should have probably won one again in 2012. So they're a team there that they've been knocking on the door for quite a while, and it's kind of, I suppose, the stars have aligned in many ways with the fact that the lockdown happened. Obviously, no one wanted it to happen, but they got Quinlivan back in their team, they got O'Riordan back in their team, Brian Fox as well. Like he was unbelievable as well. He covered so much ground. He was named a corner forward, but I don't know, he just played everywhere. Like he just literally kept hunting the ball down for the entire 60 minutes he was on the pitch. And yeah, like Tipperary, that forward line of Sweeney and Quinlivan, like they're not as good as Sean O'Shea and David Clifford, I'd say, but they're definitely not far behind.
Yeah, because I had Conor Sweeney on earlier in May or June. We're going through the years, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, this Tipperary team probably should have achieved more than they have after that All-Ireland semi-final. With the talent that they do have, and that's 2 All-Ireland semi-finals in 5 years, which is just incredible.
Yeah, and I think it was Liam Kearns who was their manager before. Like when he stepped down, like even though David Power had the success like a minor level, I did think and Tipperary are they're going to go through a bit of a transition now in the next few years and you could kind of see that in their league form. Got relegated from Division 2, went into Division 3. They almost got relegated from Division 3 as well. Like it went down to the final game with Leitrim. Just having Quinlivan back in their team, Brian Fox, Colin O'Riordan, and just getting a bit more from some other players as well, like Liam Casey as well, and some of their defensive players like Kevin Fahey as well. That was really what drove them on. And I suppose it is massive for them, because you do think like in the future, will Tipperary get a better team than the one they have now? Like, will they have a better chance to win a Munster title? Like you thought in 2016 that was their year really, because Kerry were kind of in a transition back then as well. But huge for Tipperary, like for getting that, massive for anyone who's from Tipperary, I'd imagine.
Yeah, because towards the end, as I see a tweet, actually, it had almost that Louth 2010 feel to us, that was Louth's day, and it had to happen for them, and it had to happen for Tipperary yesterday. With Dublin were taken out by Meath that time, and of course, Kerry were nowhere to be seen yesterday, so it was a huge thing for Tipperary yesterday. And I think the fact Kerry were gone as well, they have no fear of Cork. I don't think they've been in the same division as them, and they've beaten them a couple of times and been close with them. Where if they were playing Kerry yesterday, the fear factor would have been there.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose, because obviously you'd imagine next year Kerry are gonna Kerry will probably win 5 in a row now on Munster or something like that. That's a huge learning curve for them after losing that Cork defeat. Cork are probably going to regroup massively now as well. Like they'll really want to right the wrongs. So it was a huge opportunity for Tipperary, and it's one they took in the end with the win. But it was very 2010-esque, all right, with the way what happened with Louth. Obviously Louth didn't win it on the day, but certainly for Tipperary, to end a huge long wait like that. And who knows if they keep Quinlivan and they keep a lot, and I don't know what O'Riordan's situation is. Maybe he goes back to Australia, but you never know. If they're definitely a team that could challenge, at least kind of going through the qualifiers or whatever. I don't know what the route's going to be next year, but they're definitely a team that's to watch out for in the next couple of years if Quinlivan stays on as well.
Yeah, and then you have Cork on the other hand, and it's almost like the Kerry win's just completely forgotten about, and they're back to square one again. They're probably feeling it at the end as well, because they knew that was a huge opportunity for them as well. They had done the damage by taking Kerry out, and you can see even on the players' faces, whilst Conor Sweeney's lifting the cup, they went to a few shots. They were really disappointed with that.
Yeah, like I can't imagine a worse way really to lose a Munster final. The fact you've beaten the best team in a semi-final, and then you've lost. Then you've lost in the final. It's kind of similar to I think it was Mount Bellew who beat Corofin in the semi-finals in Galway, and then lost the final. Yeah. It might have been Mike Cullen, but it was kind of similar in that kind of sense where like you've done the work, you've done the hard part, you've knocked out the top team, one of the best teams in the country probably, and then coming up against Tipperary, being massive favourites, like I said before, when they're a team that's not normally favourites. And yeah, you could see with a lot of the players, even some of the experienced players there as well, like, just a really, really hard one to take for them, because I think they know that was a massive opportunity missed. And even winning a Munster title, the fact they've so many young players that have won under 20 titles, like it would have been, I think everyone can kind of agree that in the next, 5 to 10 years, Cork will probably be a really good team. So if they had won a Munster title early in their kind of like cycle or whatever, it might have just propelled them a bit more to get to an All-Ireland maybe a bit quicker. But now, after that defeat, it just kind of puts them back to square one.
Yeah, and for Tipperary next is Mayo again, like they were in 2016, and they caused them a few problems that day. Mayo, I remember, got a few goals, one lucky goal at the end just to seal us, and they played them in 2018, I think, as well in the qualifiers in Thurles, and they had troubled Mayo for long periods of that. So again, a bit like Cork, they won't fear Mayo.
Yeah, definitely not. Like, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting game. I suppose it's kind of mad because I think everyone kind of assumed about Mayo and Tipperary were like in transition, and they were two great teams maybe from a few years ago, and obviously on different scales, and probably didn't, on different scales, but didn't achieve maybe what they were set out to. And here they both are in an All-Ireland semi-final once again, just like a couple of years ago. And yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one. Like Mayo are playing without fear, Tipperary are playing without fear. It's going to be interesting because Mayo will go in as massive favourites, and they haven't really had the favourites tag at all this year, really. I know like there was kind of slight favourites going in against Roscommon and Galway, but even at that, they weren't overwhelming favourites like they will be in this one. So it'll probably suit Tipperary, to be honest, because they do have the forwards to hurt Mayo, but it is hard to kind of look past Mayo because they have looked very, very good in the Connacht Championship, and even some of the new players they've introduced, like Owen McLaughlin and Mark Moore coming off the bench, and even Paddy Durkin looks to be back to his best as well. So it's hard to look past Mayo at this point, but I'd say Tipperary will definitely give it a good go, I'd say.
Yeah, and then obviously at 4 o'clock then was the Ulster final, Cavan pulling off an even bigger upset by taking out Donegal. And I kind of mentioned earlier, maybe Donegal were just bought into their own hype. We're thinking about Dublin, the semi-final. There was a lot of talk. I even had Chris McCaig on last Thursday, and he actually predicted Donegal to win the All-Ireland. So there was a lot of talk about them, and again, Cavan fully deserved the win.
Yeah, I think the Armagh win might have been the worst thing for them in many ways, because like not only did they win that very comfortably, but they gave just absolutely everything through the entire 70 minutes. They even looked very jaded in the Cavan game, like especially in the final 20 minutes or so. They looked like they ran out of steam. And yeah, I think they probably did buy into their own hype. Maybe not so much the players, because, I know players and management, they probably don't look too much into the media and whatnot. But I do think it probably might have had a knock-on effect. Obviously in Donegal, it's a tight-knit community, and yeah, players might have heard one thing from another, and they might have, and even what could have happened was, even Declan Bonner could have sat down on Saturday night and said, I'll put on the Dublin and Meath game just to kind of check them out. And maybe he was watching that, and all of a sudden his head was like, Jesus, Dublin are just looking really, really good here. I don't know how we're going to beat these. And he kind of took his attention away from Cavan a bit. You never know, that could have easily happened as well. Like, so I definitely think they were looking too far ahead after the Armagh win, and definitely underestimated Cavan, especially Cavan's work rate, because like in Ulster with the pitches as well, like they're such tight pitches, they're way different to Croke Park. Like almost anything can happen. Like you've seen some mad shocks down the years with Fermanagh getting victories, and even Antrim in 2010. So yeah, like Donegal definitely should have been a lot more prepared than they were.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll hold my hands up. I didn't give Cavan a prayer going into this. I thought actually Donegal win by the most of all the teams this weekend. But Cavan's battling spirit, they've earned the Ulster title. When you look at all the games they've gone through, the comeback against Monaghan, they were struggling a bit against Antrim, got over the line, 10 points down against Down, and came back, and then yet to beat arguably a top 4 team in the country. They've really earned it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I was kind of same as yourself. I thought Donegal would win the Ulster title. I didn't even think Cavan would beat Monaghan, to be honest. I don't think anyone really did.
No. Yeah.
And yeah, like they've battled through all 4 games, and they've shown a lot of character in all the games, even in the Antrim game. In the Antrim game, they were really poor. That was probably their worst performance, and they still managed to get over the line. And I think Mickey Graham, I'd say probably right now, is probably the best manager in Gaelic football, I'd say, alongside David Power. It's hard to really judge Desi Farrell because Dublin are that good, but like with Mickey Graham, even his in-game management and his changes and his substitutions and just little tweaks he makes, even at water breaks as well. Like Cavan just always seem to find an extra 10% in the final 15 to 20 minutes, and they never seem to die down. Like even in the Down game, when they were losing that, they looked down and out, they looked beaten, they managed to fight back and win. And even in the Donegal game, despite the black cards, some questionable refereeing decisions at times, they still managed to fight through that and win. And it was quite incredible, really. And I think there'll be a lot of teams in Ulster that'll probably look at what Cavan have achieved, and that might be a great thing now for Gaelic football and for Ulster, and even in Munster. In fact, maybe even counties like Fermanagh and Derry, they'll look at that and think, that could definitely be us now next year or in a few years' time.
Yeah, because I mean, Mickey Graham has an incredible CV now, because he won the Leinster club title with Mullinachta as well. With the population they have was just an unbelievable achievement, and to win an Ulster title with Cavan, having to go through the most amount of games, being behind and beat the teams they have, it's a serious achievement.
Yeah, without doubt. Like I remember when Mullinachta, because they beat Kilmacud Crokes, who like they wouldn't be my club team in Dublin or anything like that. But yeah, it was just a mad victory altogether. I actually think was it Vincent's they beat, or no, that was Ratnew actually. It was Kilmacud. Yeah. So it was a mad victory altogether. And yeah, like he's done some job. Like when you think they didn't have Cian Mackey, didn't have Darragh McVeety, Conor Moyna not there either.
Yeah.
They had a lot of things go against them. Got relegated to Division 3 after the Roscommon defeat. And I don't think it's just kind of the way he's able to turn things around. Like his man management just must be absolutely fantastic, because the players just literally seem to give 110%. They literally give everything on the field for him. Like, and it was same with Mullinachta as well. And yeah, like he's definitely, for me, probably the best manager in Gaelic football right now anyway.
Yeah, because I mean, they should have a few All-Stars probably on the way, but I think one person deserves it more than anyone. Is Thomas Gallagher. The impact he's had in this championship has just been incredible, and he just epitomised what Cavan is all about yesterday. Battling away. He's probably not even the most technically great footballer, but it's just his heart. He wants the ball the whole time. Even his point, he battled past 2 Donegal fellas, got the ball up and just powered it over the bar. An incredible performance from him again.
Yeah, like when he came off the bench against Monaghan, he changed the game completely. And then, even against Antrim, he came off the bench, made a massive difference. The Down and even in this game versus Donegal, he's made a massive difference from the start as well. Yeah, like I didn't even hear of him before this year, in all honesty. And he's just seemingly come out of nowhere. And yeah, it's just his fight, his work rate, his determination. He clearly obviously had an injury coming into the championship, and he probably, it wouldn't even surprise me if he's actually just played through it, because he just seems to, unless he's literally been carried off in a stretcher, there's no way he's coming off the pitch. Like even with a black eye, after the game and his interview, like it looked like he'd been in a boxing fight or something. Like, and that probably sums up Cavan in many ways, because they're all fighters. They're not like a Tipperary maybe, where they have like individual stars like Sweeney or Quinlivan, or maybe they don't have like one or two like players who are gonna be the best players on the pitch, but they just have tremendous work rate all around the pitch. From players like Jason McLaughlin, a cornerback. They just have so much talent all around the pitch, really.
Yeah, and then from a Donegal perspective, then obviously I can't remember them winning too many pure knockout games. I know they've won Ulsters and all that, but at quarterfinals or whatever, in a good while, like they just seem to be faltering just when it comes to the business end.
Yeah, it seems to, like, that's the third year in a row where they've lost right before an All-Ireland semi-final. And even there's been a similar trend where they seem to get talked up quite a bit before they lose as well. It was similar against Mayo last year, and even Tyrone the year before. So yeah, it is kind of interesting. Like, they seem to I'm not too sure what it is. It's definitely something Declan Bonner will need to look at, because they even look like they gave up in the Cavan game, which was really strange. Normally you don't kind of associate that with a Donegal team. Like, even in the final 10 minutes, like, a lot of even when the Cavan goal went in, their heads dropped. And even the likes of Michael Murphy and different players didn't have their best game. And for whatever reason, they, for a third year in a row, they just seem to get caught with cold feet. Whether they are looking ahead to semi-finals or thinking too far ahead or underestimating the team they play is hard to know. But it's definitely something I'm sure Declan Bonner will need to look at, because it's great winning Ulster titles, but I think everyone would agree with the players that they have, they should at least be making the Final Four.
Yeah, and then Cavan's opponents are obviously Dublin. Complete different scale. Saturday night, watching that, I thought Meath would be more competitive. I didn't think they'd get within 7 or 8 still, but for a while, Dublin really put the foot down on them, and an incredible performance again from them. Yeah,
it was a strange final in many ways, because it was over after about 15 minutes. And it was like, even for myself as a Dublin fan, like you do want Dublin to win Leinster titles, and you want them to do well, and you want them to be successful, but it is quite strange just watching. You're so used to Dublin just absolutely hammering teams in Leinster at this stage. And like Meath, for whatever reason, I definitely think they can play a lot better. Like, they definitely can, there's no doubt about it. It's the second year in a row where they've come into a Leinster final, and for whatever reason, they just seem to completely lose themselves within the final. Like, there seems to be maybe like a psychological issue within their team or something at times, especially in Leinster finals. I know playing Dublin is daunting and it is a Leinster final, but if you do just completely give up and you completely lose your heads, and you don't have the spirit or the fight, you are going to get absolutely hammered. There's no doubt about it, because Dublin don't show any mercy. It was great from a Dublin point of view, but I can definitely understand a lot of people who would be very concerned about the Leinster Championship at the moment, because when you look at Munster, Connacht, Ulster, those championships are definitely fine, and I'm not too sure what they do with the Leinster Championship. But it's just it is getting a bit ridiculous how easy Dublin are winning at this stage, because you've probably got the best team of all time in the weakest province. It's kind of crazy, really.
Yeah, because they're kind of an outlier, because if you actually took Dublin out, it'd probably be a decent enough province. A lot of teams in Division 2 and 3, and you do get decent matches in the Leinster Championships, but when it comes to whoever plays Dublin or the final, it's always just a foregone conclusion, and it's usually 10 to 20 points, let's be honest.
Yeah, in Leinster, like, if you took Dublin out of it, it'd probably be I'm not saying that should happen, but if that did happen, let's say, then it would be very competitive. Like, there's really not much between a lot of the teams, even counties like Longford and Offaly, Carlow. Like, there's not really much difference between them and a Meath. And I know Wicklow got hammered by Meath, but I do think Wicklow are on the up as well. There were a couple of good players in there. Like, at the same time though, I do think, like, a lot of counties, like, it's not really going to change with Dublin. So I think a lot of them probably at the same time, rather than making excuses about resources and funding and all this. And although it is definitely a thing, I do think at the same time, like, at least with me, they did try and address the issue, and they did actually come to Dublin and try and beat them. Whereas a lot of other counties have probably thrown in the towel a bit. but at the same time, you can't really blame them because it must be very disheartening because for players, I'd imagine, like if you're from Westmeath or anything like that, you know, and you're going in for training or whatever, there always has to be a goal or a vision or something to work towards. And when that's not there, it just makes, you know, there's just no real point really, is there? Like,
yeah, I mean, a lot is talk about the Leinster Championship. I don't think Dublin probably get the credit. They do get credit, the credit they deserve. They bet, you know, Meath are a decent team, and they just absolutely brush them aside. I mean, Kieran Kilkenny is arguably playing. He's probably the best player in the country right now, I think. And you know, he's racking up 3-4 points per play every single game, and it's just his general play is fantastic. And they've added a few more. Obviously, Robbie McDade, Sean Buckler, Paddy Small, Tom Lahith played the few games as well. Like, it's just a machine that's been used a good bit, but it is.
Yeah, like it's. Yeah, like probably the best Leinster final performance I've seen from Dublin, I think. Might have even been one of their best performances ever, really. Like in as far as I can remember anyway. Maybe there might be a few other ones, but yeah, they were just absolutely relentless. Like their physicality all around the pitch. Brian Fenton in midfield is just unbelievable at dictating the play. He can almost control the tempo of a game. He's that good. And yeah, like I suppose one of the concerns like for Dublin coming into this year was you did have a lot of changes. You had a new manager, you had new players, you had players who weren't there like Jack McCaffrey and Dermot Connolly, Bernard Brogan. But the players that have come in look just as good, if not even better. Like Sean Bugler looks unbelievable, been one of the best players so far for Dublin. Robbie McDade, although he probably doesn't have the same offensive output, defensively really, really good. And then Desi Farrell, like I think Kieran Whelan even said it in commentary, like Desi Farrell's going for the 1 in a row in Leinster. Like everyone kind of keeps thinking about Dublin this and Dublin going for 6 in a row, but you forget that Desi hasn't won anything, you know, and he wants to win in All Ireland as a manager. Yeah. He wants to win Leinster titles, and I actually think maybe the fact that Jim Gavin is not there anymore might actually be a good thing from a Dublin point of view, because they have a fresh face in there and they still have that same winning mentality. And Desi did win minor titles as well, so as a manager. So yeah, like Dublin definitely at the moment really it looks like it's going to be very hard to see who beats them, because it doesn't look like there's been no evidence to show that they're going to show any complacency or get caught on the hop like what happened with Donegal or Kerry.
Yeah, because they are playing Cavan in the semi-final, and I actually seen the odds in Dublin are 1 to 100. I don't think I've ever seen that for an All-Ireland semi-final. And I suppose they could get caught on the half, but you'd have to think it's Mayo or nothing now. Like, Dublin won't get beaten by Tipperary or Cavan, let's be honest. You know, they've done incredibly well, and they won't care, let's be honest. They're in bonus territory now. You know, Cavan won't care if they get beaten well by Dublin. They have that Ulster title in the bag, but it's probably Mayo is the only block stopping Dublin now.
Yeah, definitely. I think Mayo are the only team. Like I think Cavan probably will give it a good fight, and they will work really, really hard up and down the pitch, and they'll give it 110%. The only worry would be with Cavan is they've achieved something massive in winning an Ulster title. That when they go 8 to 9 points, 10 points down against Dublin, will they still have that same fight in the final 10 to 15 minutes that they had in Ulster? That's the main question with them. And then it's also on Croke Park as well, which, you know, Dublin are so used to playing on. I don't think this Cavan team have played in Croke Park other than maybe like a Division 2 final.
Yeah.
And a lot of the players on this team wouldn't have played in Croke Park, maybe in minors or under 20. But yeah, Mayo definitely probably the only team that can put it up to Dublin. Even at that though, they like Mayo maybe in a few years when the likes of Owen McLaughlin maybe have more years in the team, and some of the other players like Brian Walsh and whatnot, Mark Moran have a bit more experience. But the great thing for Mayo though is that there's no pressure really on them this year. They don't have that tag that they would have had in 2017 where it's like they need to win an All-Ireland now or they'll never win one, because they keep producing players. Like they do keep producing players, and they are definitely moving in the right direction. And I suppose with the year that's in it, it's kind of like a free hit for them. If they win it, brilliant. But if they don't, they'll probably come back next year and they'll be thereabouts next year again.
Yeah, because on the semi-finals, it would be nice nearly to see them at neutral venue, not Croke Park. because of course if Cavan could bring 20 or 30,000 fans down to Croke Park, it'd be brilliant. But the fact there is no fans, I've even seen playing Dublin with Roscommon. We played them in the Hyde last year in the league, and I think it was 4 or 5 points, really competitive game. Whereas if it was in Croke Park, it was in Croke Park, we lost by 20. Like a pitch does have, especially for Dublin and Croke Park, they blitz teams there. So even maybe in a Tullamore or even the Hyde in Roscommon, just somewhere that might just not even it up, but just help Cavan a tiny bit more.
Yeah, like it would to a certain extent, but I suppose at the same time, like Croke Park is the national stadium for Gaelic games, and it has always been that way. It definitely, I definitely do get your point though. At the same time, like it definitely would make it a lot more competitive. And if Dublin were going to play Cavan and Ballybuffet or Omagh or something like that, let's say, you know, as a Dublin fan, you would be thinking, you never know, like they could get caught a little bit here. But in Croke Park, you know, just because of how big the pitch is and how much space there is, it's never going to happen. But yeah, it's one of them things where, I don't know, maybe further down the line, like the GAA could look at having neutral venues for semi-finals maybe, and then the final be at Croke Park. Maybe for semi-finals you could do, like if Casement Park gets built, you could have one there, and then maybe another at Páirc Uí Chaoimh or different things like that. But yeah, like I think maybe because Dublin are so good, I think probably that's why a lot of people are looking at Croke Park and kind of taking them out of Croke Park. But I think at the same time, like it is the national stadium, I suppose, at the end of the day. So I'm not too sure you can really make too many changes with that for the moment anyway.
Yeah, well, I think it probably will be a foregone conclusion. It will be a Dublin/Tip Mayo final, I would imagine. Nothing Tip. Not maybe Cavan they might enjoy that again. Everyone write them off, and they might pull off the greatest upset of all time.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I mean, you definitely wouldn't rule it out, but I'd say it would be. I'd say it'd just be very unlikely. Like Dublin are just a different animal, unfortunately. It's probably a shame for Cavan. I think if they were playing Mayo or Tip, they'd have a great chance of making an All-Ireland final. But playing Dublin, especially, the only good thing is they have a 2-week break till playing Dublin. But at the same time, they're so used to playing week in, week out that actually it might have been a good thing if they actually played Dublin next week, because, you know, they're so used to playing that it might have helped them. But I suppose we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, we'll leave it there, Aaron. Thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, no bother. Cheers for having me.